you enjoyed this cover, and now to take a brief look at the song. We start with an introduction, short 4 bars, which is made up of 2 plus 2 bars, but they're extremely conflicting in idea and character. The first 2 bars is extremely mysterious, so it's really important, if you were going to play this, to have a really translucent and mysterious tone. Very, very light. It's almost bell-like. If you were to play it a little bit heavier, it just loses a little bit of that mysterious aura. Although that could also work in certain contexts depending on how you choose to play this piece. The second half of this introduction is using the same motif, but it's extremely loud and boisterous almost. So you want to use a lot of your weight and forearm strength. I think you should try to aim for as much contrast between these 2 bars to create as much impact and drama as possible. And then after that, we get into our first kind of theme section. So it's quite a wandering theme. Now, while this part of this piece is a little bit easier, it's still important to treat it very importantly, at least in the melody. If you don't treat it with very important, it can become very flat very easily, and it doesn't really lead anywhere. But in order to get this kind of wandering, kind of confused feeling, if you can shape the melody, it's able to capture that element a little bit better. So just a little bit of rising, falls, and each note leads to the next kind of thing. And then the bass line, which has the harmony, that can also help convey and stir some emotions as well. Has a bit of an ebb and flow. And that will help push the music along and help increase tension where appropriate. So the second half of this first theme comes in after this, and it's a little bit thicker. The texture is a little bit thicker, and it has a little bit more urgency as a result. So it's important to have this a little bit more tense than what came before it, because through this passage we're eventually building up to this E major chord, which dissolves into that next section. The second part is a little bit different to the first part. It's a little bit more urgent, and that's through increasing a little bit of the tempo, but also there's a little bit more going on in the song. So in this case, I think it can be helpful to increase the tempo, but also have a special kind of sound in the left end. If you pluck it, it gives it a little bit more energy than just regular staccatos versus. And then you can contrast that with a more lyrical right hand. Yeah? The next part, the right hand stays the same, or more or less the same, but then the left hand, it's quite difficult, this part, at least how I've written it. I chose to write it as tense because that made the texture a little bit thinner. If you do it as thirds, it is possible, but it just sounds a little bit too thick, at least for my taste, because then we get something like, whereas I think, while it's a little bit harder, it sounds a little bit better in my opinion. And then the next part, we're starting to get a little bit more virtuosic here. Here, in order to be able to play something like that, it's really important to have an open palm and have your fingers and palm very, very relaxed, and to have them curl in on themselves. I think that's the best way to play a passage like this, wherever it may come up, whether it's in a piece like this or in something more classical. But here, the texture is getting thicker and there's more stuff going on. So we can have the tension and the drama is building up. And then this drama, it all peaks at this emotional climax that we all love. is to manage the tension all the way up into this emotional climax. So be wary of how you layer the increasing tension and make sure to have ebbs and falls within these little sections until it builds up to. So that's really peak. While it's not the loudest point of the piece, it is definitely the emotional climax of this piece, where it just opens up into this grand kind of almost choral symphonic kind of style. It's just so luxurious and grand, and it's by far one of the best parts in an anime opening. And then from there, then we build back into... It's important to use the left hand to manage the ebb and fall within a certain phrase as well, so it doesn't sound too flat. As opposed to ti-ta, ti-ta. Yeah, it's important to keep the shape of the melody going. Another important thing is, particularly when you have chords, be careful not to hammer the chords, even if it's loud, because then it starts to become a little too heavy. Whereas in something like this, it should be open and grand. But if you go straight down and hammer the notes, it has this kind of cut, harsh, almost metallic kind of feeling. Whereas if you slow down the attack of the key, so if you slow down the push and then resolve it by kind of letting the weight go forward through the chord, it sounds a little bit more supported and less hammered, and you can make a large sound without it sounding too harsh. For example, something like that. And then we get into the real climax, at least volume-wise, of this piece. This is a bit of a challenge. We have leaping octaves in the left hand. That can be very hard to practice. How I would recommend practicing something like that when it's so fast is to start off slowly and then to prepare each chord, or each octave in this instance, and really focus on where your hand placement is. And then gradually, through muscle memory, your hands will learn where to go more or less, and then it can get a little bit faster. Because it is more of an effect, it's not 100% important to hit every single last note. But you want to hit some, or at least most of these C's, so you can get that kind of exclamatory vibe to it. When it does move to the black keys, it becomes a little bit easier to aim for, so you can relax a little bit more there. But of course, just because you're busy with the left hand going crazy doesn't mean you can forget about the right hand. You still need to shape that and make sure the melody comes out. So there are a lot of things to think about in the end of this piece. It is quite quite challenging. So just to summarize, this piece is an absolute fantastic opening intro. It really sets up the drama and the intrigue of the anime. And what it does so well is it manages to keep the audience guessing, at least the first time when you hear it, as to where the drama and where the intrigue is going. And then when you get to this emotional climax, it's such a rewarding payoff. And then you have that kind of grand, awesome feeling for a good 15-20 seconds. And then we go into absolute mayhem, which is what the anime is about, isn't it? And you can really, it's just so crazy. Yeah, it's just so epic. And it is a really masterclass of a song. Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any other requests, please put them in the comment section, and I will try my best to upload more videos on a consistent basis. I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.